Hey everybody, how you doing? Mikey's back with a dip review. It's a little chilly up here this morning. I actually had to wear my jacket. Yeah, it's a nice, foggy, crisp fall morning here in Southern Oregon. Kind of sad. This is perfect hunting weather around this area. And because I was on the road and traveling a lot, training for my new job, I did not buy my deer tag this year because I was not sure if I would be home enough to actually go out and do some hunting. And now here I am. I've been home now for over a week. Perfect hunting weather, and I didn't buy a tag. Yeah. Oh well, there's always next year. But usually with me and hunting, if I don't get a deer the first day, I usually get a deer in like the last 3 or 4 days of the season. It's either the very beginning or towards the very end. In the middle, I have horrible luck. But first day of the season, if I see one, yeah. But usually it's towards the last 3 or 4 days of the season for me. That's when the rut starts to kick in around here. The deer get horny, they get stupid, and they make mistakes, and I take full advantage of that. Yes. Anyway, today, dip review. I'm taking a look at Red Seal Wintergreen Long Cut. Red Seal. This is a 1.5 ounce can. Your normal dip can is 1.2 ounces. Red Seal is 1.5. Do the math, and that's 25% more. So you get 25% more when you buy a can of Red Seal, if you can find Red Seal. Red Seal is one of the budget blends that's distributed by U.S. Smokeless. The people who bring you Copenhagen, Skoal, and their budget lines are Husky and Red Seal. Don't hold me to this, but my personal taste buds, my personal feeling is Husky is the budget brand of Copenhagen, and Red Seal is the budget version of Skoal. I have no proof to that, but that's my suspicion just from what I've comparing the two and stuff over time. Especially for the naturals. If you ever tried Husky Natural, it tastes an awful lot like Copenhagen Natural. Anyway, we have Red Seal. This is the Red Seal logo, green can, gold around the edges, wintergreen long cut, and the obligatory government warning. On the side, always 25% more tobacco, logo, obligatory warning, and a bunch of miscellaneous writing, and the UPC. On the back, you just have the guaranteed fresh and a best by date or a sell by date and a lot number. And smokeless tobacco, 100% American tobacco, sale only allowed in the United States, underage sale prohibited. Net weight 1.5 ounces, that is 42.53 grams for you metric people. U.S. Smokeless Tobacco Company in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's crack this bad boy open, which I had already started to do before I realized I hadn't done the can thing. There we go. And here we go. Alrighty. There's your money shot. Nice dark brown, nice wintergreen aroma. Like I said, it smells an awful lot like Skoal. There's your can shot. Get you an idea of kind of what the cut looks like. Got a clump sticking there to the can lid. It's actually started to oxidize the can lid just a touch. This is on the tail end of its freshness life. Actually, it's beyond its freshness life. I gotten so used to finding fresh cans in this area, I did not check the date. And this one has passed its sell by date. But not by a whole lot. It's still got plenty of moisture. So, I'm not too worried about that. I've dipped cans that are up to 6 months past their sell by date. I actually did a video probably it was close to a year ago. I did a video. I had a fresh can of Copenhagen Extra Long Cut, and I had a can that had its sell by date 6 months past. And I did a comparison. The fresh can did have more moisture, but the 6-month can still had moisture, and I did check the flavor of both, and they both had good flavor. Um, the older can took slightly longer for the flavor to fully develop because it was slightly drier. It had to rehydrate in my mouth a little bit. That was about the only huge difference, was a time factor from when you first put it in your mouth to where you really get a good burst of flavor. Other than that, it wasn't that big of a deal. But that's just a personal preference. Do I prefer fresh cans? Of course. Of course. But can you dip an older can? Yes, you can. The worst case scenario is it'll be a little bit drier. Okay, enough talking. Let's get the dipping. I'm already 5 minutes into this and I haven't even put anything in my mouth yet. Ooh, monster pinch. There's a nice big fat pinch. I don't know if I'm going to do that big fat of a pinch. See if I can get some of this to fall off. There we go. Slightly smaller pinch now. Yep. But yeah, the price. This is around $6.5, but you get a 1.5 ounce can. This can is slightly larger than a standard dip can, so if you have a can holder that's made for 1.2 ounce cans, this may not fit. It might, but it might not, because it's just a slightly larger diameter. Nice, sweet wintergreen. Not really sweet, but it does have some sweetness. That's why I think this might be kind of more towards Skoal, if I had to compare it to anything. That's why I think this might be the budget version of Skoal. The sweetness levels of this remind me a lot of Skoal. The wintergreen flavor, it's very Skoal-like. Skoal and Kodiak, their sweetness levels are pretty much the same. Kodiak has more intense wintergreen than Skoal does. But when it comes to downright sweetness levels, they're pretty very similar, at least in my taste buds. The sweetest wintergreen out there would probably be hands down Stoker's. Copenhagen's got a nice sweetness level. Then Skoal, Kodiak. Actually, Cougar. I'd probably put Cougar before Skoal and Kodiak. Stoker's, Copenhagen, Cougar, Skoal, Kodiak, and then Grizzly at the tail end. Yeah, all the Grizzly products seem to be a little bit lower on the sweetness scale from their counterparts in other brands. But today we're talking Red Seal. Average sweetness, good wintergreen flavor. Not real sharp on the wintergreen. It doesn't have much of a wintergreen bite, that wintergreen burn that some guys crave. This is subdued. It's not quite there. You get a touch of it, but nowhere near. Not much. Which is another thing that leans me towards the Skoal end of the spectrum for which budget brand this is meant to mirror. That's just my personal observations. I might be wrong. But if I had to say this is the budget brand of X, I would lean towards Skoal over Copenhagen. Husky is the other budget brand, and to me, that one is more Copenhagen-esque than Red Seal. But yeah, all in all, solid product. You got the sweetness, you got the wintergreen. Not much of a wintergreen burn, but you get the wintergreen flavor. Nicotine level, average nicotine. It's not going to bowl you over. It's not non-existent. It's just middle of the road average nicotine hit. Not that bad. You know, it's not weak, but it's not strong. It's just a good middle of the road, kind of like Skoal. Too busy talking, and they swallowed some spit. If you guys ever see me going, that means I'm talking too much. I got a good amount of spit forming in my mouth, and it's triggering my gag reflex. I have a very low gag reflex. Doctors hate me when I go see a doctor. Use that tongue depressor, start sticking in my mouth. I'm a gagger. That thing hits the back of my throat. Don't like it. But yeah, nicotine hiccups and a low gag reflex, and I do it on camera. I'm sorry. That's just me. If you don't like it, well, go watch somebody else. Anyway, yeah. Still kind of bummed that I didn't get a deer tag. I should have spent the money and just rolled the dice. If I can get out, great. If I can't, but hunting license and deer tag in Oregon, they are kind of expensive. Yeah, they keep raising the rates, because we need to do more for natural resources, and they don't do anything more. They make more regulations, and sometimes I think our fish and game people are idiots. Some of the regs they come out with, I'm like, really? Really? You felt a need to put that in the books? Why? Well, it's you know how many deer there are in this area? Just about as many deer as there are cattle. They're everywhere. Yet mysteriously, after the first few days of hunting season, they can vanish. Around here it's black-tailed deer. Blacktail. They're smaller than white-tailed deer. And they are incredibly stealthy. You can literally be walking through a field and you will not know there's a deer bedded down in that field until you almost step on it. And that deer springs up, takes off, and gives you a freaking heart attack. They're extremely stealthy, extremely quiet. And yeah, one of their number one defenses is to hunker down and hide. And they do it extremely well. For an animal that, the last buck I got probably weighed 150 pounds, 160. Didn't make a sound as it was coming towards me. I was sitting down in the brush. I put out a couple of deer calls. Nothing was happening. I was just about ready to give up for the day. Popped out a cigar. I lit up a cigar. I look over, and here's a little buck walking down the trail, heading towards me right after, coming to see what that deer call was about. Never heard him. Only thing I saw was a slight movement. The movement that tripped me off. Laid in another light call. Brought him in a little closer. I'm not a distance shooter. I like to call them in close. That's just me personally. If I can call the deer in to, say, less than 60 yards, I've won. And, I'll take the shot. That's just me personally. I enjoy that challenge of the hunt to bring them in close. That's why I've always thought about taking up bow hunting. Because bow hunting, you have no choice. You have to call them in close. There's a lot of guys when they're out hunting, yeah, I shot this deer. He was 1,000 yards away on the edge of the other canyon over there, and I nailed him. Like, oh yeah, have fun walking over there, down and up and around these canyons trying to find that sucker. No, I'm naturally lazy. I will bring them to me. I think it's more sporting, personally, and I'm naturally lazy, and the less dragging I have to do to haul that thing out of the brush, the better. So, yeah. I always tell people, I lived in Alaska for 20 years. And sometimes when you're out moose hunting, by the time you get to where the moose are, you're 3, 4, 5, 6 miles away from your vehicle. And I always told my friends about hunting, before you pull the trigger, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, how much daylight do you have left? And 2, how far are you from the truck? Because if it's getting dark and you nail a moose, and that moose has, you just shot a 1,500-pound animal. And it's getting dark. Yeah, have fun with that. Trying to haul that thing and all the meat out. Basically, you got to field process them, quarter them down, and haul it out by quarters, because you're not taking the entire thing out. No way. The antlers alone on a moose can weigh over 100 pounds. And if you have to leave any of that out there overnight, yeah, have fun feeding the bears. You go back the next morning and get the rest of your meat, and odds are there's going to be a lot less of it there. Yeah. Have fun feeding the bears. That's happened to me once or twice. Get a moose, haul out what you can before dark. Tag it on the GPS so you know where it is in the morning. Get up at the butt crack of dawn, go back out there, and half of your moose is in the belly of a couple of grizzlies. Yeah, fun times. Anyway, back to the red seal. It's very Skoal-esque in flavor. It's very Skoal-esque in the way it sits in your mouth. Very Skoal-like all the way around. Nicotine level, flavor, texture. It reminds me of Skoal. So, if you like Skoal Wintergreen, you'll probably enjoy Red Seal Wintergreen. Why? Because to me, they're extremely similar. This might be slightly weaker in flavor than Skoal. Not quite as intense in flavor, but it's very similar, if not identical. All in all, solid product. Can't complain. And you get 1.5 ounces. That's their selling point. They give you a bit more tobacco for your money. So, anyway, Red Seal. If you like Skoal, odds are you're going to like Red Seal. Anyway, I will come at you later with another Dip, Juice, Snoo, Snuff, or alternate product review. Until next time, I'll catch you later. Bye.